Welcome to May 20th, 2025 McCordsville Plan Commission meeting. Can I have a roll call, please?
Scott Shipley.
Here.
Dr. John Price.
Here.
Brianne Schneckenberger. Here. Devin Stetler.
Here.
Chad Gooding.
Here.
Katie Reichert. Here. Brian Hurley.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Before we get this meeting going, I'd please advise that all testimony is being recorded. All persons speaking will be asked to give their name for the record and to spell their last name so that minutes are accurate. We request that you please silence or turn off your cell phones. The order of those speaking would be the petitioner would have the first 10 minutes in which to make his or her presentation, followed by 10 minutes for all remonstrators to speak, 5 minutes for any government officials who wish to address the issue, and then 5 minutes for rebuttal by the petitioner. Our attorney will give each side a 2-minute and 1-minute warning as time is expiring. We ask that all persons conduct themselves in a civil manner and reserve the right to request those who are disruptive to leave. With that, we'll go ahead and call the first order of business. Ryan, are there any agenda considerations tonight?
Yeah, just one. We would like to move item 4A, the comprehensive plan, to the bottom of the agenda. While I would love to think that everyone's here tonight for that, they're probably here for other reasons. So,
okay. With that, let's go ahead and call the first order of new business.
we'll do minutes.
We can do minutes too. Yeah, we'll go item number 3, approval of minutes from our April meeting. If the board has had an opportunity to review the minutes, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the April meeting minutes.
Katie has made a second. Sounds like Brianne was going to make a second. All in favor say aye.
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 And we will need a roll call for that.
Correct.
Scott Shipley.
Aye.
John Price.
Aye.
Brianne Schneckenberger. Aye. Devin Stetler.
Aye.
Chad Gooding.
Aye.
Katie Reichert.
Aye.
Brian Hurley.
Aye.
Okay. Now let's go to the first order of new business under item number 5, PC-25-012, Forester's request for a favorable recommendation on a rezone for a PUD for 80 acres located along the west side of County Road 500 between County Road 700 North and 600 North.
All right, I will just do a really brief introduction, and then we'll have Cheyenne take over for the petitioner. So, location there is shown in the yellow highlights. This is on 500 West and between 7 North and 6 North. There are some transmission lines here bordering the south end of this property. So this is a PUD rezone and annexation. Tonight we are just talking about the rezone portion of the project. It's about an 80-acre site, proposing a max of 168 lots, dividing into the 2 areas. You kind of see the yellow and then the rose-colored. Rose-colored are the 65-foot wide lots. The yellow color are the 80-foot wide lots. Entrance off 5 West, of course, with stub connections to the west into Gatherings, which is under construction. And then the 2 stubs to the north would be future stubs for future connectivity should and when the other properties there develop in the future. So staff did have a few comments tonight. We will talk more about these later. Just want to highlight that we did have 5 or 6 comments to be addressed at some point tonight. And then right now, the process tonight, we're doing the introduction now. Next up, the 4-star will make their presentation, followed by any initial questions or comments from the board, and then we'll move into a public hearing. This is a required public hearing tonight. Following public hearing, we have a rebuttal session, and then any final questions from the board and final staff comments before it being eligible for action. Those options tonight are a favorable recommendation, an unfavorable recommendation, no recommendation, which is basically a neutral recommendation, or to continue it. So with that said, I will turn it over to Cheyenne.
Brian, I hate to interrupt,
Yes.
but I'm not getting any video.
Give us just a second. Our tech expert's working on it.
There we go.
Awesome. Hello, my name is Cheyenne Hoffa, Hoffa. I'm the entitlements manager for 4-Star Group Indianapolis. We are a residential developer. We are not a home builder, but we did just go through the ARC with some elevations from 2 different builders for our neighborhood that we are calling Stone Chase on County Road 500. As Ryan indicated, we are directly to the east of Beezer's Gatherings at Aurora Section 2, and we have kind of taken their lot sizes and continued those on into our development, Stone Chase. So we have 65 and 80-foot wide lots. We got some elevations approved at ARC tonight for some Silverthorne product on the 80s and some DR Horton product on the 65s. A builder has not been selected for this neighborhood though, but the builder would follow the character of the homes approved tonight at the ARC for those lot series. Our neighborhood has 3 different amenities. We have a playground, a putting green, and a seated pavilion, along with some walking trails, pretty extensive throughout the neighborhood. We are going to retain a wooded area there at the southwest corner of the development that will include some more primitive walking trails of kind of a crushed stone instead of pavement. This will most likely be a multi-builder community, and we're seeking a favorable recommendation from you all tonight. As Ryan indicated, there were some staff comments that we have mostly been agreeable to, and I have some additional information from his comments from some of the answers that I gave you the other day. So I don't know if you have those still pulled up.
Yep. There you go.
Okay. So some of the concerns, we added some hardship language to the PUD that we have been seeing some of our other developments struggle with when we have rental provisions in the PUD that really restrict all rentals, and this is just a hardship provision where if a homeowner would need to seek for financial reasons to rent their property for a limited period of time, they would seek approval from the HOA. I don't know if your legal has been able to review that and has any comments there, but.
I did. So under 4A2, it references paragraph 6B, and I don't see a 6B in this.
Yeah, there's
PUD.
a typo there, as well as it references the neighborhood that my attorney pulled it from, Cardinal Village, I believe, in there later on, so.
Okay, so just from an initial outset, hard to understand that an exception to that paragraph exists when I don't know which
Yep,
paragraph I'm
understood.
actually cross-referencing. So I think the biggest heartburn that I have is by putting this in the PUD, we're now putting the town potentially in the middle of what could end up to be a litigation matter, that if somebody needs to seek a hardship from the HOA and whether they get it or they don't get it, if they do not get it and they come to the town and say you need to enforce your PUD, and traditionally the town wants to stay out of all private matters, so I don't like that we're potentially being exposed as an enforcement mechanism, because that's what will happen when constituents in the HOA are unhappy one way or the other. So I have reservation with it. I would prefer to work through that. If they decide to proceed with this tonight and don't table it, I would like to kind of work through some of that and massage some of it between now and when it gets to council, to avoid some of that.
Perfect. Some other suggestions were on the 80-foot lots. We currently have a 1,700 square foot minimum size for the home. I've agreed to have a 1,750 for a single-story home and 2,000 for a two-story home. Currently, all the elevations that have been approved by the ARC do have a 2,000 square foot minimum. However, we like to give flexibility to potential homeowners that might be seeking to live in the neighborhood. Additionally, there are some additional lots that need to have some rear architecture, including like a covered porch or screen porch that Ryan has indicated on our site plan. We're agreeable to those.
Those red circles there on the screen are indicative of what the petitioner and staff have agreed to add to the rear elevation map.
Additionally, the garage width was another concern. This is consistent with some other PUDs that are on the south side of town, so we would like to keep with that 58% garage width allowance in our PUD. And then all of the homes will have a 24 square foot covered porch. We are agreeable to that, as well as mounding along County Road 500. Not on this list, but I received an email late in the day today, and we will also add language that agrees to widen County Road 500, the entire frontage with a 12-foot lane and a 2-foot stone shoulder. So we've mostly addressed all staff comments, and again, we're seeking a positive recommendation, and I am open to any and all questions from you all, the public.
Before we open it up to the public, does the board have any initial questions on the matter presented? Ryan, did you?
Sorry, I was just going to ask, can we clarify a little more on the garage width? Sorry, I didn't dive deep enough into to see what was written. So are we changing what was written, or are we?
I'm seeking to keep for a 3-car garage that a 58% garage width is the maximum that we're seeking there. Again, Ryan mentioned that this is normally higher than they normally see. However, in some other PUDs on the south side that have been passed recently, the Denny White, I think Gatherings also includes that, which is right next to us. So we're seeking to keep that garage width.
Staff did do a deeper dive today, and I would actually agree with the petitioner that Gatherings, Denny and White, which is the Claiborne, which is later on your agenda tonight, Jacoby and Hampton Walk, all 4 of those PUDs do have garage width percentages that are pretty much in line with this proposal.
Ryan, before we open it up, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I don't think so. We've kind of hit the high points here. I think staff's certainly ready to open public hearing up and see what comments we get from that.
Okay. Any other questions from the board before I open it up? If not, this matter does require a public hearing tonight. I'd like to open it up for the public. If there's anybody before the board that wants to come up and make a comment or ask a question, please feel free to do so. You'd like free to walk up to the mic, please. Can you say your name and spell your last name for the record, please?
Sure. Hi, my name's Catherine. Last name Parr, P like Paul, A-R-R. Good evening. Thank you for hosting this tonight. Like I said, my name's Catherine, and my family and I live on 5209 West 700 North, which borders the property. We've been in McCordsville for about 4 years now. We love it. We love the growth that's happening. We love that it's very thoughtful, and we appreciate the council giving these opportunities. With our property bordering right at the north side, we would like to just ask a couple of considerations. We use our land, we have 10 acres about. We use it for agricultural purposes. Ryan, I don't know if you could pull up the email that I sent, but I did want to show you.
And we do have copies.
Okay, there was a I resent the picture that I wanted to share with you because this is a big part of our heart and what we do. This is Freedom. In May of 2024, we worked with the Carroll County Sheriff's Department. They seized her from a neglect and abuse case. This is Freedom. Sorry, I get a little emotional. I love her to death. I've seen this horse come from the worst that an animal can experience to the best that an animal can experience in our care. She's amazing. If you ever want to come out and meet her, you're welcome to. She's a beautiful animal. We host several senior animals, horses that can no longer be ridden. some goats, some pigs. We've really had the vision to provide a safe sanctuary for animals in need, and we would love someday to open it to the town. That's a future vision. We're very busy. We both work full time, but future vision, we would love to share that with the community. But for right now, that's what we spend our time doing. If we're not working, you'll find us in the barn or in the pasture with our animals. We'll be going to feed them in about an hour. And as this new development moves forward, like I said, we just have a few considerations. We'd ask that a landscaped berm be put in the back of the property so that there's a buffer along the shared property line. And a well-designed berm would provide privacy, discourage unwanted access, and create a respectful boundary between our animals and the new residential neighborhood. Additionally, we would ask that any homes directly bordering our field be limited to single-story structure if possible. That would help preserve the privacy for our animals, who have, many of them, been through traumatic experiences. That's why they're living with us now. And maintain a more natural transition between our open pasture, because that field back there that's where they will live. We've converted it, in fact, this year from any farming to just a pasture for them. So we're really excited about that come this fall. Can I have one more minute? Lastly,
To the board.
could I have one?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate it, and I'll finish up. Lastly, if there's an HOA planned, we'd encourage some clear communication to future residents that they're moving next to an active agricultural land, that there will be horses, other animals. Those comes with sound and smells, and we just want to ensure that they're aware so we don't have any future conflict. And I really thank you for your time again and for considering how this development affects us, and we can grow together and in clear communication and harmony for us and for our animals. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to come before the board and raise a question?
Hi, my name's Derek Vaughn, VAUGHN. We own the property right back here. So we abut up against Cat's property, and yes, they are always out there with their animals. So it looks west from us, and we get a beautiful sunset of Freedom in the evening and the sounds of it. So great neighbors. My only concern is the field here is tilled up to about 30 feet of the wood line, and then there's about 30 feet of, I guess, brush up to my property. Right along the property line, there's, I think, 5 or 6 250-foot tall red oaks with a large root system. They've been there for a very long time. And if I'm not mistaken, and maybe defer to the attorney on this, on a rural setting, if that tree falls down, something like that, it's really not my responsibility. In an urban setting, I have a little bit more responsibility over those trees. And so my question is, do these houses going to have basements, especially on that back row, where it could disturb the root systems and create, I mean, there's a bunch of trees, big old growth trees back there. So that's my big concern. And how far into the property line are they going to kind of excavate up to that line? Because there are some boundary trees in there that I share with the developer. There's at least 2 red oaks that are, I think, about 15 feet around that are right along the property line. So want to be considerate of that. So thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Julie Meyer, M-E-Y-E-R. My husband and I and my aunt live at 6671 North 500 West and 6731 and 6671. So we're directly across the road from this proposed development, so we obviously have quite a few concerns. One thing that we are concerned about is our privacy. So the 3-foot berm, if there would be any consideration for that to be taller to provide our privacy, that would be appreciated. Also, we've had a church convention at that property for nearly 115 years. It's very quiet. There's no loud music or any disruptions like that. But again, we would want that to be known ahead of time so that consideration could be made for continued privacy on our property for that. And obviously concerned about the proposed road widening and how that will affect our land and structures. The road integrity all around us is quite poor right now, and would hate to see that happen to our road as well. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to come before the board?
Hi, my name is John Anderson, Anderson. I live with Kat at 5209 on the north side. One comment I wanted to make was just, there's obviously been some thoughtful work here on the retention ponds. We've already seen the floodplain change on our property with the gatherings at Aurora, and we get a lot more water over in our field now, to the point where if we get 2 or 3 days of rain, it's completely flooded. So I don't know if there's something going on with the regulated or unregulated drains, but I would just want to call it out to ensure that we don't see an increase in flooding, because it's already getting pretty bad. So.
Thank you. Anyone else? Last chance before I close the hearing. Ryan, the record state that the hearing is closed. I'd like to call the petitioner back up, and between Ryan and the petitioner, let's address some of the concerns from the public.
Address what you can, Cheyenne, and then we'll follow up with some of the things that are town-oriented.
I appreciate you all coming out tonight and your, willingness to be part of the public process. I also live in McCordsville, so I love to see the town growing, and to be a part of that is really cool. Ryan sent over your email today, Kat, so I definitely would love to work with you to determine how best we can buffer you, whether that's on our side or your side. So I've got a couple cards over here that I'll make sure to pass out so we can chat and work out a solution that works best for the both of us, and of course the horses are the most important there. In terms of the trees, so this is just our concept plans. We don't have utilities laid out and et cetera yet. However, there most likely would be some storm sewers that are in the rear of those lots that are on the northern part of the property. But I could definitely work with you to determine what trees are on your property versus ours, and how we can mitigate any damage to those trees that are on the northern property line there, whether they're on your side or on our side, and work with you if you want them taken out beforehand. We can work together on that kind of thing, or see what we can save if that's a possibility as well. In terms of Julie across the street, we would be agreeable to do a 4-foot tall berm, and please do know that the berm will also be have trees and landscaped very well. I understand your concern of noise and et cetera, and this neighborhood will be maintained by an HOA, which tends to sometimes come down harder on residents than even the town will on noise concerns and et cetera. In terms of the roadway, our widening is on our side of the road only, so we wouldn't be doing any improvements necessarily on your side. I think there might be a passing blister requirement, but I think that it's on the property to the south of yours. Okay. And on the property that's on the east side of the road, so on the opposite side of us. And then in terms of drainage, so the requirements of, which of course you see it in real life, the requirement of the drainage is that we don't shed any additional water off of our site than is pre-development. I know you're talking about a regulated drain, so there is a regulated drain that comes up right around here and goes that way towards gathering is at Aurora. So I think most of your, with regulated drain, we're kind of on the other side of the property from yours.
I think what we see happen with the drain going to Aurora into that creek
Mm-hmm.
is that backs up.
Okay.
And then there's, I think, some unregulated drains in the farmland, so where the water's no longer seeping into the farmland.
Yep.
It's just backing up and then it just floods back into those two fields.
Okay.
Similar.
Okay, understood there. But we're still working with the county surveyor to determine whether we're gonna relocate that drain or run it through our storm system. And we ultimately outlet into the gatherings at Aurora development. So I think that I have addressed everything, but
Yeah, I think Mark probably needs to take a couple of these, talk about, can you kind of relay expectations for excavation in those rear yard drainage swales in proximity to property lines?
Yeah, just to set expectations for this, my concern isn't necessarily with the homes and basements, it's with the drainage. Traditionally, you'll put a rear yard swale that goes along the property line, and that's to catch any of the off-site water that's draining from that site. It gets routed through the drainage within the development. So in order for them to put that swale in, they'll also put an underdrain through there. So any roots that are there, obviously they have to trench that through, so it would do damage to roots that are there. And also, we don't want to have trees that are directly adjacent to that drain, because that drain would become root bound with the roots from those trees over time. So just to set expectations, if that rear yard swale goes right up against the property line, then we'd want to definitely clear out any trees on the development side. And then we'll also have to look at positioning of the trees on your side to see how close they are, because we might have to shift the drainage swale south to preserve those trees and preserve our infrastructure too. So it's early there's no detailed development plans, so we don't know exactly what this is going to be, but there would be some impact to the design if we need to shift that swale south.
And I would just add to that, I think we would like to work on that between now and, assuming this moves forward tonight, between now and council. Those trees are as big as you say they are. Those are really nice trees to keep.
yeah.
So if we can make adjustments, even if that means the town agreeing to some adjustments on somewhere else to pull those north lots southward and get that future rear yard swale away from the property line, I think we'd be open to getting creative on that.
Also wanted to address the flooding concern. There is a farm tile that the town's concerned is not outletting properly within gatherings. There's a plan within Section 2 of gatherings that's going to permanently intercept it, and they had a temporary route for that. So the town was aware that there was standing water in the large rainfall event we had in the previous. So we've been investigating that and discussing with the developer. So we're going to continue to pursue that, and that's not a drainage issue with the development plan. It's just trying to intercept that farm tile and make sure it's outletting properly. So. Was I believe the questions about the road improvements, was that sufficiently answered?
Set expectations.
Set expectations. So with this development, assuming it moves forward, the town would be taking ownership from the county for 500 West, where it fronts this development. So we'd be asking the petitioner to widen that road. Essentially, they'd be adding probably a couple feet of asphalt on the edge and then setting a stone shoulder for that. And that's just to maintain a 12-foot lane across the section. Ultimately, the county still maintains this road north and south of this development, but long-term, the town is trying to set itself up for long-term success where we can improve 500 West, assuming the town continues to grow and have additional areas of that road become the town's to maintain. So there's not any expectation as far as that we would be doing damage to that road. It would be actually bringing it up to a certain standard and then maintaining it from that point on.
We own on the west side pretty much the whole north-south of this subdivision for us and for what's in a trust. Yeah, east side, sorry, east side, for what's in our trust. And by widening the road, we're wondering how that affects our property and our farm fields that we're using for rent, things of that sort.
The widening would not affect your side where we're doing that widening. Long-term, the town would expect to do widening on the other side should development occur. The one area where it would be affecting is the town also is requiring a passing blister or a left turn lane. So that would be, let's say approximately, it's about 500 feet total of length where we would be adding pavement onto the existing road to allow for that left turn movement, and that would be on the east side. So the petitioner at some point here, as the development moves forward, will approach for right-of-way for that portion. That would be the most direct impact to you.
And are there alternatives to that?
Not ones that I like. No, I mean, you could shift the road alignment, but that's a really big change to satisfy you, just to be frank. But that is the only other alternative, is to shift the alignment. If right-of-way is not conceivable being acquisition for that on the east side, then we would look at alternatives, which would be a lane shift type thing. But it's not a great plan for the town. Okay.
Anything else to add, Ryan?
I don't think so. I think we basically have agreed the things on the list. I think that would like some time to, review the hardship language some more. We can do that between now and the next meeting. Rear lots we've agreed to, porches we've agreed to, mounting we've agreed to up to 4 feet. The garage with percentage again, after a second look at, they are in keeping with other development in the area, so staff will kind of pull back our concern on that. I think the last thing is just the minimum home size. Appreciate the petitioner, upping it from 1,700, 1,750, and 2,000. I will say we did look at the other development in the area to see what other development that has 80-foot wide lots, what those minimum home sizes were. So, for instance, in Gatherings, which has a few 80-foot wide lots, the minimum home size is 2,050 square feet for a single story and 2,670 for a 1.5 story. For Hampton Walk, it's 2,100 to 2,400, and for Colony, it's 2,000 and 2,500. So, ultimately, this is something that we're seeking input, direction, feedback from you guys on. But it does seem like the square footage is less than we have seen in other nearby projects with the same lot size.
It's probably more similar to Woodhaven, because I know Woodhaven has 65-foot lots, and like my house is a 2-story with 1,990 square feet. So I'm guessing that's just more similar to the Woodhaven, what you're going to see there.
Yeah, well, I'm speaking specifically of the 80-foot wide lots.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other than that, I think we would want to make sure that any motion would address what we've kind of discussed today, and I can repeat that when we're ready for a motion.
And I think clarifying the mound too, because in your response, I think you said you were going to do a 4-foot tall berm.
Yeah, we've agreed, I think standard is a 3 foot, but in order to accommodate privacy for neighbors, we'd be willing to go up to 4 feet on that.
So we probably want to call that out.
Yep.
If we make any move. Okay. Motions.
Absolutely.
How about the tree density for those mounding? Can it be increased from what's the standard?
I would say it can be. Right now, it's 7 trees and 10 shrubs per 100 feet. So yes, you can increase that density. At some point, you get to a point where you're putting too much in a space. This is a 50-foot wide, I think, perimeter common area, so it does have some depth that would allow for some additional plantings. But again, as they grow and mature, at some point it's kind of a diminishing return. But you certainly could do more. It's possible to fit more in, I should say. That would really be the petitioner's decision.
Yeah, we'd be willing to add another tree per 100 feet.
Did you hear that, John?
Yeah, I was gonna say, how about 2? And they don't, not necessarily specified as the types of trees, right? As far as they can be deciduous as well as evergreen.
We do call it out right now. It's I think 3 evergreen, 2 deciduous, and 2 ornamental, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So we would figure out how we do the additional 2 if the petitioner agrees to that. John, we'd work that out in the language and make it clear in the PUD.
Yeah, we'd be agreeable to 2. And we can, unless you have a preference on what type of tree, at this time, Ryan and I can work that out.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with Ryan making the decision.
Okay.
I guess I'd be curious to know too, what, from your angle, why you're recommending the 1,750 and 2,000 square foot homes on the 80-foot lots versus what we're seeing in some of these others.
Yeah, just to give more flexibility to the potential homeowners in this neighborhood. The 1,750 is a good baseline for one of our home building partners, that they have quite a few really popular floor plans that would accommodate that square footage. Like I said, the current approved ARC submittals right now all are over 2,000 square feet, and most likely a lot of these homes on the 80-foot lots would be larger, but especially for like some ranches, say you have someone who wants to have a ranch home with maybe a bigger lot, and our lots currently are at 140-foot depth. A bigger lot with a ranch home wouldn't be able to choose that floor plan just due to the square footage. And we could put in, maybe a percentage needs to be above that 2,000. I'd be agreeable to that as well, to make sure that not all the houses are 1,750 square feet, but just kind of give some flexibility, especially allowing some more options on ranch homes.
Well, increasing it 50 square feet doesn't seem to be a big compromise.
I'm agreeing to having the 1,750 for the single-story houses, and then 2-story houses are required to be a 2,000 square foot minimum on the 80-foot lots.
Yeah, the 1,750 still seems to be a little bit low.
So John, if we did like a percentage, do you have an idea in mind? I mean, like, would that be agreeable? We've done that in the past, I believe.
We have.
Yeah, I think, a small percentage for the 1,750, that would allow them to put some ranch houses, the smaller ranch houses in, but they would be a minimum number, say 25%.
I would be agreeable to 25%.
Okay.
I was thinking the same thing, Dr. Price.
So is that 75% at 2,000 or higher?
Yes.
And 25% at less than 2,000? Up to minimum of 1,750?
Correct. Yeah. We would, we'll work out the exact language post-meeting, but I think we know the direction, and a motion should include something to the effect of having staff work out that language.
Any other questions from the board?
Well, as far as the tree retention area in the southwest corner of the property, it appears that, from your plot plan, that some of that's going to be removed in order to add a couple additional lots.
Yeah, yes.
It's hard for me to tell.
I know, I'm so sorry. My last site plan had it come through. I think the woodlot, and I don't know, he cannot even see me on the screen right here. But yeah, probably the last 4 lots are kind of in that woodlot area, and we're still in talks with the Hancock County Surveyor's Office on how exactly we're going to be allowed to deal with the legal drain. So we may end up losing those lots anyway, because we might have to relocate the legal drain over in that area, depending on some conversations that are happening now with the surveyor's office and some other municipalities. They've kind of changed some of their requirements since gathering, or changed some of their direction they've been giving since gatherings at Aurora. So I am fearful we might lose we might lose the lots and some of the woods anyway, just due to relocating the legal drain. But we're really kind of sensitive to we already have the majority 65-foot lots, and we really want to try and retain as many of those larger lots as possible there. But we're trying to maintain as much of the wooded area as possible.
So in order to retain it all, you potentially could, lose, 4 of the larger lots, and that would pull it back sufficiently enough to leave the trees.
To leave all of the trees, yes. But we are maintaining, probably 80% of the existing trees there. That honestly, it's kind of full of trash right now and et cetera. We'll clean that up. Just old farm materials, nothing dangerous or et cetera, but just,
We obviously can't speak for the surveyor's office, but we have seen them become much more restrictive of the regulated drain easements in the last 3 months. It kind of caught us off guard, actually, to be honest. So if they end up removing your 4 lots, they may also have you clear cut that portion of the woods. I think it remains to be seen what they'll make you do. So we may lose some of these woods, and it's no end to us. We can't do anything about it. So,
and we are proposing what is left to be in a tree conservation easement. And again, we'd come through and clear out whatever trash and et cetera might be in there.
And as far as the north side, there seems to be a lot of open issues with drainage up there, correct, Mark? It's kind of open-ended. I know that one of the citizens, was looking at having some berms and fencing up there to try to isolate the horse farm. And I believe the next gentleman has that corner of his wooded that he doesn't want to lose any trees there. And obviously, just for drainage, you could not go into his property and remove trees, but you could damage trees by, putting on a swale close to that property line, correct, Mark?
Yes, and I think we'll have to discuss that when we get to the a little further along, because there will be impacts to where that is. As Ryan said, we'll probably have some offline discussions about how to try to preserve that. I always get a little nervous when we're talking about large trees, because usually it's the root line is traditionally thought of about where the drip line of the tree is. So if we end up with a rather large tree on the north side of the property, the impact from that can extend quite a bit onto the development site. So I have not seen these trees, but I think we'll have to have some discussions on how to preserve the drainage through this, and we may look at different approaches right by that wooded area.
And we do have a little flexibility, as the PUD currently requires a right now we're at 140, but the PUD only requires 130-foot lot depth, so we have a little bit of play there that we could move things around as we get into primary plat without really changing what this site plan looks like.
And just as a reminder, this whole, I don't want to call it a struggle, but this whole potential conflict between drainage and trees and wooded areas is very common. This is normal to have this. You never have full engineering done at a rezone stage. So this is something that, if it's going to be worked out, it's going to have to be worked out at a later date. We just don't have that information to do it. We'll do our best to get creative, and we might be able to think of some language to work up that would assist us in having flexibility when we get to that stage, but we are not going to have the information even in 30 days to be able to be definitive that we can save trees or not save trees. We're just not going to know that until the site plan's fully engineered, until we have full comments from the county surveyor's office, et cetera.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Dr. Price?
Yes,
Any questions?
I'm good.
Okay. If there's no further questions or comments or discussion on the matter, I would entertain a motion.
I might just remind what I think we've heard, and please correct me if I've missed anything or stated anything incorrectly, but we do have a commitment to a 4-foot mound along 500 West to work with the PARs and the Vaughns to address tree and or animal buffering and screening. 2 additional trees per 100 lineal feet along 500 West, and a maximum of 25% of the homes to be less than 2,000 but greater than 1,750. We'll work out the exact language.
And I think there was a point of making sure that the purchasers of the property are aware that there are farm animals close at hand. We've had situations in the past, where people move into a neighborhood and they're unaware of, say, music. And we'd hate for this to come up as a decisive issue.
Thank you for bringing that up, Dr. Price. Yes, we can work on some language that puts future owners on notice of animals and agricultural in the area.
This is a little different, though. There is a right to farm act that as long as they don't change or expand their operations, you were there first. So there is a distinction here.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about the horse farm itself. I'm concerned about the residents who purchase a property, build a house, and then become aware that there are horses in the backyard with the sound and the aroma that's associated with it.
Ms. Park did remind me, she also asked about a single-story restriction. Did you have any comments about that?
Yeah, what would it be, about 4 lots wide, 3? Yeah, I think 5. Okay. Yeah, I think that we can agree to that as well.
Okay.
If there's no further discussion on the matter,
Your motion can be, to include all of these things. This is not final action, right? It has to go to council. So yes, we want to know that you want us to address it, but we have time to work out the details. So
I'll make a motion for favorable recommendation contingent upon staff's conditions, specifying also what we discussed tonight, including the 4-foot mounding along 500 West, the extra 2 trees per 100 feet on that mounding to be later determined what type of trees, a maximum of 25% on the 80-foot lots being the 1750 size, language to be worked out later with staff, working with the neighbors to the north on landscaping or anything to assist with the tree line and animals, and then language for the purchasers to understand the farm animals and agriculture, and then also the single-story restriction.
Second.
That's a mouthful.
I wrote it down, guys.
Brianne has made a motion. Do I have a second?
John was your second.
John is a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Do we need a roll call on that?
Yeah.
Scott Shipley,
Aye.
Dr. Price,
Aye.
Brianne Schneckenberger,
Aye.
Devin Stetler,
Aye.
Chad Gooding,
Aye.
Katie Reichert,
Aye.
and Brian Hurley.
Aye.
Thank you. I
Motion
appreciate your time
carries.
tonight.
Thank you. Sorry, I lost my tab.
Hit your back.
Okay, looks like the next item under new business is PC-25-013, Lennar Homes request for approval of a primary plat for 108 lots on plus or minus 53 acres at the southwest corner of County Road 900 and County Road 500 West.
Thank you, Mr. President. You've well laid out the location, but there it is in the aqua color on the map. I will say the primary plat does also include the homestead lot here. It's shown outside of that aqua color, but it is within the primary plat. That existing home would stay. This is their conceptual layout. It's approximately 53 acres, a max of 108 lots. That is inclusive of the homestead staying there. Again, we have two areas of different lot sizes. One entrance off 900 North, a stub connection into the existing Alexander Ridge, and then a future stub to the south for future connectivity to the south. Process tonight is a little bit more abbreviated than the last process, as there is no required public hearing tonight. Certainly, you can always take comments if you'd like them. But following this presentation, the petitioner will give a very brief presentation. We'll take any questions from the board, and staff will have no additional comments. They've addressed everything, and it's eligible for action tonight, which is to approve, deny, or continue. And just last mind, this does meet all of the town's requirements.
And Ryan, just a point of clarification, this does or does not require a hearing tonight?
I'm sorry, you know what? It does require a public hearing. My apologies.
Good evening. My name is Taylor Navarre. That's Navarre. I'm an entitlements manager with Lennar Homes. Our address is 11555 North Meridian Street in Carmel. I want to thank you all for hearing our case tonight. As Ryan mentioned, this is a primary plat for Alexander Ridge Extension, what will essentially be Alexander Ridge Section 3, as it will connect to the existing Alexander Ridge community with another entrance off of 900, County Road 900 there. I don't have any additional comments. We've worked with staff, and we appreciate working with them on the various items related to the site, such as the sidewalks and the buffering, everything like that. I do want to mention with the shift in the stub street to the south to a future development, which was considered in the PUD, we allowed for some movement there to better align with the coordination with that street network. It did shift slightly west and shifted one home site into area B. So what was the home site count for area A was 60, that changed to 59. Okay. And then in area B, it was 47, that shifted to 48. So I just wanted to make that clarification. There's no difference in total home site count in the community. It was just that slight switch into section A and B there. So I'd be happy to answer any questions the Plan Commission or the public have tonight, and we respectfully ask for your favorable recommendation and approval of the primary plat. Thank you.
Does the board have any initial questions on the matter? If not, I would like to open it up to the public. If there's anybody here from the public that wishes to come before the board and ask a question or make a comment, please do so. Going once. Brian, have the minutes state or recognize that no one wished to make a comment or ask a question. Anything further to add, Ryan?
Staff has no further comments for Alexander Ridge 2.
There's no further questions or comments from the board. I would entertain a motion on the matter.
I have one more curiosity. Do we shift it because of the existing trees?
Correct. We wanted to be able to, in the future, as this is connected to, have it further enough west that you could double load the future street without the lots getting into those woods. So we wanted to create the opportunity to save those woods in the future.
I appreciate that.
Yep.
I will make a motion to approve the Alexander Ridge 2 primary plat.
Brandon's made a motion of approval. Do I have a second?
Second.
We had 2 seconds. Scott made a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We need a roll call, please.
Scott Shipley,
Aye.
Dr. Price,
Aye.
Brianne Schneckenberger,
Aye.
Devin Stetler,
Aye.
Chad Gooding,
Aye.
Katie Reichert,
Aye.
Brian Hurley.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Looks like the last item under new business, Ryan, is PC-25-014, Dries Holmes' request for approval of a primary plat for 150 lots on Block 1, plus or minus 91 acres located northeast corner of 750 North and 700 West.
Yep, thank you very much. Again, in Aqua, I will add that Dries' primary project is encircled with the aqua color, but the primary plat does include this approximate 10-acre Block 1 here. So it's not a part of their project or the development of their site, but it is part of the primary plat because it is being subdivided off for the rest of the project. So just a clarification there. That is this conceptual site plan. This is actually, we'll show you a slight update to this. This was the conceptual plan as approved by the Plan Commission and Town Council during the rezone process. Again, 2 entrances on 750, no entrances on 700 West. We do have future stub connectivity in one location to the north. And just bear with me, I want to show one change to the plan. It really resulted from some comments from the county surveyor. Again, we're seeing them be a little more restrictive with their easements, and so it's having some effect on projects. And one of those ended up for us being, I think, a good change in the project. I'm trying to find the best sheet to show you this. It's none of these. Right there, probably. So previously, the trail came out and around these lots and around this pond and then kind of came in and it ended up being really tight down this line. And I forget where it ended up punching through some lots. And now it wraps around and comes through a little bit more of a wider common area and comes out onto this eyebrow onto the street. So it just is, I think it's going to feel like a more welcoming path. It stays away from some of the things that we discussed during the rezone process, if you remember some of those concerns. So positive change that I think is worked out through. The plan still meets with all the requirements of the PUD ordinance. And so following a public hearing tonight, we would recommend approval.
Okay.
Hey Ryan, I just want to remind, I have to recuse myself on this. Yeah.
Go ahead, Rick.
Thank you, Ryan. Members of the board. For the record, my name is Rick Ellis with Y Engineers. Our offices are at 10505 North College Avenue, Indianapolis. This evening I'm here representing Dries Homes with the Creekside primary plat. Appreciate your introduction, Ryan. I think that pretty much well covers everything that I had. We've read through the staff report and agree to all the recommendations. In addition to the staff recommendations on the 3rd page, points 1 and 2, I believe we've successfully addressed those, and I appreciate the efforts that you've allotted us for that. We would respectfully request your favorable recommendation for our primary plat this evening. If you have any questions, myself or the staff with Dries would be happy to answer them.
Okay. Thank you. So Ryan, you and staff were satisfied?
We are. We received minor updates to the plat. I think it was yesterday, addressing our last 2 comments on the grass strip and the setback issue. Those have been added to the plat. So staff is happy with the plans. Everything's progressed well, and it's met all of our requirements.
Okay. comments or questions from the board before I open it up to the public? Once again, this requires a public hearing. If there's anybody from the public that wishes to come before the board, ask a question or make a statement, please do so.
Dan Vale. I just want to make sure the commitments are still in place regarding the extra landscaping to try to deter people from walking around the pond onto our property.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Dan.
That is still a valid requirement that we will flush out the details of which at the development plan stage of whatever section that occurs on. So, yep.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for the board? Ryan, I'd like to close the hearing on this matter. Ryan, did you have anything else to add? If there's no further discussion on the matter, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the Creekside primary plat.
Brianna has made a motion of approval. Do I have a second?
Second.
Lydia has made a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Can I have a roll call, please?
Scott Shipley.
Aye.
Dr. Price.
Aye.
Brianne Schneckenberger.
Aye.
Devin Stetler.
Aye.
Katie Reichert.
Aye.
And Brian Hurley.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
We just note for the record, Chad abstained. So,
Ryan, it looks like you've made it through new business tonight. So the next item is going back to old business.
yes, sir. Comprehensive plan. So, we're back. I think it's been 2 months since we talked about this, and you heard at that time the full presentation, 30 minutes of captivating discussion on a comprehensive plan. I will not do that again tonight. I want to keep this very, very brief because Chad and John will get to hear it again next month at Town Council, and Beth and Mark. Just as a quick update, I'm going to run through just the updates tonight, just the things that the substantial changes. You know, we did other smaller tweaks and typos and fixes like that, editing and formatting. We're not going to go through that stuff. We'll highlight some of the bigger stuff. I'm happy to have any questions you have. I would recommend opening it up to the public again in case we have someone that wants to speak, even though we did do that previously. And then we would, at the end of all this tonight, ask for a recommendation to the town council. So, really quick reminder, the territory that we are covering with the comprehensive plan is what we call our planning territory. That is bounded by 1,000 to the north, 400 west to the east, 500 north to the south, and then either 700 west or 800 west to the west. That did not change, just setting baseline here. So again, process. It is key that once you guys have certified this plan, it cannot change at all before it is adopted by the town council. So if the council comes back with any additional changes, it will come back to you. We will ask you to then reconsider those changes, and then you'd make a new certification that would go back to the town council. So we are hopeful to avoid that because that does delay us by about 60 days. So once the county adopts, we will take a copy and get it recorded at the county recorder's office, and it becomes the official guiding document for growth and development of the community. Once we've done that, and we're working on some of this stuff and behind the scenes right now, but we will kick off more public processes and more in-depth processes to adopt a new unified development ordinance, sanitary sewer master plan, and a Parks and Rec 5-year master plan. So, number one on the things that we have updated since you saw this, and I think it was March. We had, in a few locations, we had some more specific spots called out as parks and open space, and we have changed that to be a little bit more generic. We felt like it was important to set expectations, whether they be that we do buy a park or we don't buy a park, right? And sometimes folks will see us denote an area on a plan and expect that park to be there, and then when we don't end up buying that park in the future and it's developed, it can create issues. Likewise, sometimes we call out a location we'd like to have a park at, and folks feel like their land value has risen because the town has unending piles of money to use to buy a park with. So it's not true, obviously. So we just became a little bit more generic with some of those locations. You can kind of see we circled in red to make them a little bit easier to see. we have some asterisks kind of spaced around the plan as areas, general areas to seek parkland out in the future. The idea is that we are spreading these out around town to make them all be in somewhat of a reasonable proximity to our population in the future. So that's number one. Number two, population projections, and this is in the appendices. It's not in the actual plan, but the previous version just, we had our current population today, and we just applied a growth percentage rate to it and calculate out for the next 20 to 40 years. And so at the really low, slower growth, 4% range, it produced a really low population for us in 20 and 40 years. At the high end, it produced a population build-out scenario that we would never achieve. It was over 100,000 people. We will never be over 100,000 people because we don't have enough land mass to be over 100,000 people. So we kind of changed how we went about this. We, Holly and I worked to set some assumed densities for each of those land use categories that we have talked about last month. We have boundary neighborhood, we have central neighborhood, we have old town and town center. We set some general densities. We're not saying these are the densities that we're going to use in the plan. These are just some densities that we felt like were conservative densities and representative of how McCordsville's grown thus far. And then we simply take that by the acreage in each one of those land use categories. We multiply that by our census multiplier number, which is 2.6, and that produces a population in the future. And that max population build out was 47,760. And then so what the graph does is it tells us how fast we're going to get to that build out scenario. So depending upon the percentages, right, we get there either fast or really slow, or somewhere in the middle. So that is what we did. It produces, we believe, a future build-out population that is more realistic than just applying a growth curve to it, because it accounts for land mass. With all that said, also in this plan is acknowledgement that we have not done a large, comprehensive public process to determine what densities are appropriate for each area. Therefore, this recommends that in a year or so after we've adopted our UDO, which we will identify densities per zoning district, that we amend the comprehensive plan to match that. So we are acknowledging that this is a rough estimate of our max build-out population in the future, and that we need to absolutely amend this in about a year's time to account for the changes with the UDO. Number three, airport. So we mentioned this again that in March, that we are still working to kind of understand exactly what the airport is doing with their master plan. That plan is still not complete. And they've not publicly revealed all of the details of that plan. They did meet with us. We had a conversation about it. And this language, I'm not going to read through all this, but it essentially talks about what they've told us, that they do plan at some point in time to have cargo service out of the airport. And then at some point in time, even further in the future, they will not rule out having reoccurring commercial passenger service at this airport. That obviously is a massive game changer for land use in the area when and if that ever happens. So we've kind of summarized that in those few paragraphs, and then the action implementation there at the very bottom is that we need to come back and amend the comprehensive plan after they've adopted their master plan. So again, it's probably going to fall in at about the same time we're amending it for the population projections. We're going to amend it based upon what we've learned from their master plan and make the necessary adjustments to the future land use map. Does that make sense? Okay. And then we have a fiscal statement. So as we've spent 12 months adopting this beautiful comprehensive plan, our state legislature has changed the funding formula for local government. And we are still, us and everyone else in the state, are still determining exactly what that means for us and what those fiscal impacts are. We do know there will be an impact. We are already projecting losses next year as a result of SEA 1, and we anticipate those losses probably increasing in future years. To what extent, we do not know. So we have this statement in here essentially giving us some cover that once we do learn those impacts, if Mr. Developer or Mrs. Developer comes in and wants to do something, and this gives us a little bit more firepower to say, yeah, we know that what you're doing is in keeping with our comprehensive plan, but SEA 1 and other legislation have changed what it means to us. And so it's just a little bit more cover for the town council to say no to projects. And it acknowledges the fact that we drafted this plan without knowing what those impacts are, because we don't know what they are still to this day. So it is kind of a CYA statement that we have in it. It's in the early on in the plan. And that's it. Those are the big ones. I do want to go back to the map real quick. So those are the changes that are in the plan today in the final formatted version. Holly and I would like to get your opinion on two other things as we sit here tonight. If we continue to look at the map, you always find things that you're like, oh man, maybe we should add this or change that. We have two potential map edits we'd like to get your opinion on tonight. So the first one is right here. This is the intersection of 900 North and 600 West. That southeast corner there is that we lovingly refer to as the old trailer park property. It has been, envisioned as commercial. We've had a lot of commercial interest in it, and we just realized earlier this week that we probably should have the commercial hatch shown on that property. So it seems like a really easy edit that we can do. We want to make sure you are comfortable with that, and if you are, and we are able to do that in the motion tonight, we'll simply add that hatch to the map, and we all move on. And the second item is probably a little bit more of a discussion item, a little bit more complicated. So I think most of the Plan Commission, if not everyone, is aware that there's been a mega site discussion in the county that involving Buck Creek Township. That project was ultimately withdrawn at the county level, but it did create lots of public discussion about its impacts on Tuttles and other agricultural properties in the town. And as we've thought more about that, it kind of jumped out to us this week that this piece of the purple area here, the purple area is our office and manufacturing hub land use category, might be better, more appropriate as boundary neighborhood. The current airport plan, sorry, when this thing goes to sleep, the cursor goes away, so I apologize. But that runway actually goes this way. So right now, while I will acknowledge the airport would probably prefer not to have residential here, we think residential's the better land use for the town of McCordsville. And so we would recommend that we change that tonight, again, via motion tonight, to change what I'm going to call the triangle piece at the far southeast corner of our planning area from office manufacturing hub to boundary neighborhood with the transitional hatch marking on it. Again, we might have to change that again in a year. So we get that airport master plan and it changes everything. That might be when we come right back to in a year and change again. But for right now, as we sit here, it just feels like we've had a lot of discussion about wanting to do some business park development, wanting to have some office and manufacturing type uses, but not doing the large, grand industrial parks. And so it just feels to us like that little triangle piece there probably needs to be the intensity of it decreased and pulled back down to a residential zoning classification. So we wanted your input on those two potential changes.
Is that border 400?
Yeah, 400 it's essentially the northwest corner of 400 west and 500 north. Between that intersection and the ditch line. That's the ditch right here, this dashed line.
So if that's going to be closer to the mega site, then you have manufacturing on that side. Why is that be residential?
We're trying to signal that we would like development to be a little more context sensitive. So we actually have heard that we believe the county is going to go through some process to amend their comprehensive plan. We don't know to what extent yet, but it just seems like, we certainly had some opinions, had that mega site move forward, and we felt the need for our comprehensive plan to back up some of those comments. And in order to do that and be more context sensitive, it felt like that triangle really should start transitioning back as it goes away from the airport back to some lower intensity uses.
Did you get any sense that mega site's coming back once they find a user? That's kind of how I read. Because
I don't know. Honest
Yeah, or
answer.
anything like that? Okay.
No, yeah, I have probably personal thoughts on it, but I don't think, we don't have any information that would lead us to believe that, other than we actually think they had a user all along and they just didn't say it, so. A user for a portion of the site, I should say.
No, I think you're right on for both those.
One of the things that kind of made us start to go this direction is, again, we don't know the impacts of SCA 1, but we do know one thing is that it likely puts more emphasis on local income tax dollars, or it does put more impacts on local income tax. And how do you attract high earners? Quality of life, right? Quality of life. What is Tuttle's? Quality of life. And so, this is going to make us rethink some things. And the initial gut reaction we've heard from some communities is to stop spending money on quality of life. And that's the absolute wrong thing to do. Because if you want to survive in the new system, however we determine it impacts us, is most assuredly, or almost assuredly, going to involve communities doubling down on quality of life to attract high-income individuals and continue to be able to do things like McCord Square. And how do you do those? Well, you have to have quality of life in order to attract those things.
Do you see any concern there? It looks like the airport authority owns the bottom half of that triangle, and then they own like the rest that goes into that purple. Like, you don't see any concerns there with them owning that piece of land?
There could be.
Who knows?
There could be. There could be some issues there. I won't sugarcoat that or say that I know all the impacts of this decision. We did look at the horizontal and conical and whatever the other fun airport terms are for all the surface zones of the airport. It's in what I call the yellow area, because that's about my knowledge of it. But what's also in the yellow area? Woodhaven, Stansbury. So there is at least some evidence that other residential projects have been approved in that same zone, airport zone. Now, this one would be closer than those projects are to it, but it's also more off of that primary flight path. So there could be impacts. It may be that we learn later on that there's no way we'd ever get residential approved there. That is possible. But it seems like the safer play to do that and then adjust later than show it as office and manufacturing hub and wish we had the opportunity to do something different later on.
I agree.
Smart.
Anything else, Ryan?
I don't think so. We would just look, again, I would open it up, but there is at least one member of the public here, so she may have a public comment to make, but certainly open it up. If there are no comments, acknowledge there are none, but that we've done, I think we've done a lot of public engagement, reached out, we've had multiple events. Rose went through all that 2 months ago, but it doesn't hurt to be able to, again, show that we had another public hearing, and to show that we've taken every step possible to allow for comment and feedback and input.
If there's no further comments from the board, I would entertain any questions from the public on the comp plan.
Yeah, we still have to have public hearings.
We don't have to, but if you want to.
Oh.
03? We don't count you guys.
Okay, sorry.
I don't even know if it's advertised.
Yeah. Okay.
He's just doing it.
Okay, I see. Sorry.
Ryan, let the record state that nobody wished to make a comment.
Is there anything, is it a recommendation or a certification? It's a recommendation still, correct?
Mhm. Just like zoning.
Yep. So we would request a favorable recommendation on the updated comprehensive plan denoting the 2 map edits for the far southeast triangle area, moving from manufacturing office hub to boundary neighborhood with transitional, and the southeast corner of 900 North and 600 West being updated with the neighborhood commercial category.
I'll make a motion for a favorable recommendation on the updated comprehensive plan, noting the 2 changes to the map that Ryan and staff just stated.
It is a certification.
Oh,
I just read the law. Planning
Wonderful.
Commission shall certify comp plan to each participating legislative body.
So
Changing your verb.
a motion to certify?
Yeah.
I'll rescind my previous motion and make a new motion to certify the updated comprehensive plan, noting the 2 changes to the map as commented by staff tonight.
Brianne has made a motion to certify the updated comp plan. Do I have a second?
Second.
Katie has made a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Roll call, please.
Scott Shipley.
Aye.
Dr. Price.
Aye.
Brianne Schneckenberger.
Aye.
Devin Stetler.
Aye.
Chad Gooding.
Aye.
Katie Reichert.
Aye.
Brian Hurley.
Aye.
thank
You
you
got your
all.
certification.
Appreciate it. One more meeting to go, we're done, right?
Thanks,
Hopefully.
Ryan.
I'm looking at you, Chad.
Can't wait.
Any other new business from the
certified
floor?
No, we do not have anything else to add tonight that I can think of. Any updates anybody wants to make on anything?
No announcements?
He doesn't know. No, I'm happy to answer any questions. Obviously, a ton of stuff going on in town, so if anyone has any questions on any of the projects, happy to answer questions. We continue to field lots of both current ongoing projects doing things as well as prospective projects wanting to do or prospective developers wanting to do new projects. So yeah, it's a lot of the same still going. I think we saw at least one. I'm expecting at least one new zoning case on your next month's agenda and a PUD amendment on your next month's, 2 PUD amendments on your next month's agenda. That's all I can think of right now. Maybe I will preface the 2 PUD amendments. Maybe it makes sense to talk about this just really briefly. So we've had something come up. So as you all know, for the last at least year and a half, if not 2 years, in our PUDs, we've included a requirement that if you have just brick on the front, or if you have brick only on your front elevation, that brick needs to wrap around the outside corners of the home and go back 2 feet. We're just now seeing that standard actually start to get built, right? Because you guys see these PUDs get adopted a few years before homes actually get built. So we're starting to see that now. And at least one builder has had a real issue with it, or at least they believe it's a real issue for them. And they are going to approach the ARC and the Plan Commission and then eventually the Town Council with a PUD amendment to remove that standard from their PUD. So we've had some discussion about it already at the Architectural Review Committee stage or level. They'll go back to them next month and they'll be on your agenda as well next month. So don't be surprised by that. I think it's a little bit more nuanced and complicated than it seems. We have, staff does understand there's some challenges presented by that design type. And I don't know any of the builders until you get to the custom level that really integrate that design feature into the homes. They build it because we make them do it. And I'm not sure it's always the best practically done because of that. Like, it would be different if they were designing homes with that incorporated, but they're not. They're tacking it on because we require it. And so
it's the buildability of the brick, the masonry to the framing?
that's part of it, yes. And you know, you're introducing additional, what do they call it? Penetration points.
Yeah.
Right, you're adding,
It's a
actually,
seam right there.
you're adding more seam to the home, more potential spots for problems to occur. And in some of the elevations, it probably doesn't actually look better than just stopping the brick at the corner. So I'm not trying to influence you, but I think it is, you know, we tend to react, oh, they just want to remove a requirement from the PUD. I don't think this is just that. It's a little bit that, but it's more nuanced and more complicated than that. So we'll come forward with it. We're certainly ask them to look at other standards and see what else they maybe can do to offset that change, and we'll see what they come up with. So you'll see that, and I think one new project next month. And there's a few other projects that are kicking tires and a little bit further back in the process that will probably be here in July. So.
Next meeting in June, so we talked about that. Any other discussion items? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
We are adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.